Weird. All right, so then welcome everyone again. If you couldn't read from my mouth, I would like to, share my webcam. I would like to welcome all of you on behalf of the Green Destinations team. And we're going to have a very interesting session. And first of all, I would just like to stress for all of you that we would really like if you participated. So please post your questions in the chat in the question pane, and then we will collect all of them and try to ask as many as possible from the presenters and from the host during the Q&A sessions after each presentation or at the end at the panel discussion. So please really share your ideas and questions. I would like to welcome Katja Haase. Please, Katja, take over the floor.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm Katja, reporting live from Namibia. And I am working for Journeys Namibia, which is a management company managing different lodges in Namibia. And I will start off with talking about the Kwadi Huas Conservancy, which is a huge conservancy up in the northern parts of Namibia that is home to the Damara people. And it is 100% community-owned conservancy. So what we do there is we have a lodge, Grootberg Lodge, which is the home of the conservancy, but also is employing the people of the conservancy. So the lodge, a huge factor is obviously sustainable tourism, and that is of utmost importance for us. So over the past few years, the Conservancy, together with Journeys Namibia, Grootberg Lodge, and the other two properties on the Conservancy, have developed a few projects, for instance, the Educational Fund, but also mostly they've created jobs, because we are talking about a really rural area that beforehand had no job opportunities for its people, for the Conservancy. But mainly I am going to talk today about the human-wildlife conflict and how we have developed a project and developed a successful establishment called the Wildlife Fund over the last few years and how it works. So basically because we are faced with a rural area and we are faced with wildlife, we are faced with lions, we have leopards, cheetahs, but we also faced with the big friends like the elephants and the rhinos. And obviously, talking about a rural area, we have all the different farmers in the area that have the conflict of, they have livestock, but lion is hungry, so we need to find a way to make it clear, and the understanding is there that a lion, an elephant, a rhino is super important for the environment, but we also need to make sure that our farmers and our community understand that, but also have a possibility of, finding a way that we save their livestock. So what we have done over the last few years is, together with the lodge, we have developed a donating system, basically. So the lodge is donating a specific amount to the Wildlife Fund per sighting. So if we see a predator on our activities with our clients, with our tourists, there's a specific amount that goes to the Wildlife Fund, and with that money and that donation, we are able to help out. We are able to build kraals, like you can see here on the left-hand side, the bottom picture. Those are kraals where farmers can, bring their livestock in, and they are safe from lion attacks going forward. We have also developed. There we go. Okay. We have also constructed water points for the desert-adapted elephants. The important message here is our elephants in the area, they are roaming around freely. All our animals roaming around freely, and they need water, but it is a very arid, dry area So the nearest water points for them is obviously where they are going to go. And since elephants are a bit bigger than the normal animal, the damage that they bring can be quite big. So again, this is just in order for us to actually help the wildlife and the humans to actually live together in one area, in one conservancy. And I think 2020 has been a difficult year for most of us in tourism, or for all of us in tourism, no matter where you're from. And obviously, I think this is where today's topic comes in, beyond tourism dependency. And what we have seen over the last few months, since March, we had no tourists in Namibia. We are only picking up now again. So we're very excited about that part. But what we have seen is, the wildlife is taking over again. For example, on the left-hand side, you can see the lodge and you can see the view, and it is on top of a plateau. And on the right-hand side, you can see the elephants are back. So we had some guests at the lodge, which were the elephants. But with that, as exciting as it is, it also brings challenges. For instance, that, they take care of our water pipes, and not in a good way, unfortunately. So, and this is now the effect that it has on the lodge. This is exactly the same effect it has on the farm life, on the farmer's property. So, if they damage the water facilities, farmers do not have water options or any, water points for their domestic livestock. So, there's a ripple effect, obviously, to this. If we don't have the income of the tourists supplying, like the wildlife fund, we obviously are at a point at the moment where we cannot, supply the kraals or supply the water points. But it's exciting also to see that, like the wildlife is taking over, and we are finding other ways to, make sure that the wildlife and the human element can coexist. And I think that is the most important part. We're working with Namibian Lion Trust that are collaring the lions in the area, and this started now during the COVID, let's call it, season, where they are collaring the lions to firstly ensure that the farmers and their livestock are safe from the predators, that we know where the lions are, but also to save the animals, because at the end of the day, a lion also needs to be saved. A lion needs to be in an area where it's comfortable, and it's good for us to see where the lions are roaming, and what effect that has on the area and on our communities. And then obviously another big factor is that our trackers are working together with the Save the Rhino Trust. This is just to ensure, because there's so much less movement when it comes to tourists driving in the area. So we need to make sure that even though there's less human movement, our animals and our beautiful rhinos, our desert adapted elephants, our lions, among others, that they are safe and they are well looked after. And that is something that we have been pushing over the last few months, just to ensure the safety of the animals and the community. So this is just to touch some base on what we have been doing. I'm more than happy to give more information. These are my contact details. If you have any questions, if you would like to get more information on what we're doing in Namibia, please let us know, and we're glad to share more information. Okay, I think that's that from my side. I would also like to take this opportunity to present the next presenter. I'm going to apologize, because with regards to the names, it might sound a bit Namibian German, but I am going to try. Our next presenter is Magdalena Muir, a specialist in the Caribbean Pacific Islands.
Okay. Good morning. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So let me just move a couple things around so I can see it myself. We have lots of different editions here. So I'm going to be presenting today on looking at the UN SDGs and also responding to the COVID pandemic, but in the specific context of the Caribbean and the Pacific Ocean, with some brief comment on the Indian Ocean. Excuse me one second. I apologize, I'm just trying to get access to see things without this. I just have to minimize this. I apologize, I'm good now. Okay. So this is a collaboration between a number of parties, partly myself and two other individuals who are colleagues with Green Destinations Canada and the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs with Sami Harakat. So it's a bit of a blended presentation, but I've been asked to present it. If I look at a very high level, what I'm going to be discussing is how the pandemic poses an unprecedented health and economic crisis for small islands and remote coastal economies and tourism. And as a result, these destinations must move beyond the traditional tourism dependency. So if we think about it, particularly if we look at the small island developing states, which is a UN way of referring it to, they're very vulnerable and may have high levels of deaths. Some of the destinations we're going to talk about today have met that vulnerability by closing off their entire tourism economy. So they haven't had the high number of deaths vis-a-vis their populations, but then they've had the very strong impacts of falling tourism revenues and absences of remittances, the pressure of high and growing debt servicing costs. And one area that's quite crucial is the high dependence on food imports. And as some of you may know, in other areas, the food supply chain, the supply chains generally and food supply chains have been affected by COVID. And as you can imagine, that would affect some of the destinations too. So part of the information that we're looking at to deal with the UN aspect of it, which with respect to the UN SDGs and how they're implemented, is looking at the voluntary national reviews that were undertaken by 47 countries. And as you would guess, many of them have really been reporting high impacts from COVID-19. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the small, vulnerable, conflicted or highly indebted and tourism-dependent states are among the hardest hit. So now I have a series of some different comments. I'm not going to speak to all of them, but I'm going to leave them long enough on the screen. So if you were interested, you can pause the video at a later point. So there's really some very different things that I've mentioned, and some of these have really come up here in terms of what these are generalized observations of what all the 47 countries are saying. And many of them have really responded by creating new mechanisms and instituting reforms. So the case studies we're going to discuss today are really in the Caribbean, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. And these are the specific countries we've been chosen for the broader area of research. And fortunately, they're ones that I think some of you are very familiar with already, or I have had the good fortune to work on as well. And one thing I wanted to mention, we're not going to discuss this in detail because I'm really restricting it to the oceanic islands, but there are very many commonalities between art communities in Arctic regions and in small island developing states. And some of that really is vulnerability and resilience for both the COVID pandemic and climate. And one very interesting aspect that I found quite good was, as you can imagine, when you have islands and coastal regions, cruise ships and air travel is quite important. And in many instances, particularly in the Arctic, because you have vulnerable local populations as well, cruise travel has been suspended and air travel is suspended. And for example, if I look at the Canadian Arctic, it's still entirely suspended. So now we're looking at just a broader map of the Caribbean and some of the islands that we're dealing with, because it's always useful, I find, to see how the relationship between the different islands and where they're located. One thing I have in the inset there is the Caribbean Tourism Recovery Forum, and this is run by the Caribbean Tourism Organization, which represents all the areas. And this is coming up in mid-October, but it's very specific to the pandemic and might be of interest to parties. So what's been done, at least with respect to the Caribbean, is really looking at what you would say called tourism shock scenarios. And this is really for this period in time, what's the shock on the economy and the loss of GDP? And as you can see here, it's quite high. So if I look at Barbados now, and we're going to use as the first example, they have very highly dependent on tourism, employment, and revenues. What they've done is a very interesting approach, and this works with the adjacent countries, is that they have they've designated risk levels, and they also have a bubble of countries, such that if you can enter one country, you can enter in all of them. And here's just how they're doing with it more generally, and this is on dealing from August 3rd, 2020. As you can see, high, low, medium risk. And part of the problem I think we're going to have to speak to, if we look to high risk, who are the high risk countries here, just as an example? We've got the US, Brazil. Those might be parties that might typically travel extensively to this area. So it's one of the things that really comes up when we look at this whole issue of COVID risk for islands. It's very much important who are your typical tourists and what country they come from, because that has very strong economic implications. Now we're looking at Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm putting the map here which shows you Trinidad and Guyana, because I'm going to mention Guyana very briefly. So if we look at Trinidad and Tobago, it has a very large hydrocarbon sector traditionally. The revenues are currently down because of global oil prices. And so tourism is becoming more important, and the sustainable tourism offer is beginning. In part because of the income from hydrocarbons traditionally, there is COVID relief and social benefits for the tourism sector, including financing for hotel, replacements for lost jobs, pandemic leave, and something we're quite familiar with here in Canada, things such as rental assistance. I wanted to compare Guyana a bit because Guyana itself has recently discovered very substantive offshore hydrocarbon reserves. Prior to this, it was one of the poorest countries in South America on a GDP basis. One thing that's quite interesting is Guyana has been developing as a sustainable tourism destination for a number of years, including receiving from Green Destinations the best of ecotourism in Best Top 100 in 2019. So we've got a state that actually has developed sustainable tourism, but is now looking at developing also its offshore hydrocarbon reserves. So a very interesting situation. I should mention I have a bit more knowledge just because I and my team were involved in doing a country baseline assessment. The next example I wanted to draw you to is the Galapagos Island, which is very famous for the terrestrial and marine parks. And this is just a map giving you a sense of its location in relation to Ecuador. So if we look at the Galapagos Islands, it is a UNESCO heritage site, and it's very much defined and structured to be on the principle of sustainable tourism. Much of the 97% of the terrestrial landmass is a national park, and then they also have a large offshore marine area, which you might have heard some controversy about lately with the Chinese fishing immediately outside their marine borders. If we look at how the Galapagos responded to COVID, it was really to close down the islands until July. And since then, they've really started looking at using global and UN standards. And this is a very relevant one because if we think about the safe travel protocols, a lot of the tourism in the Galapagos Islands is marine-based, and that is the best way to see some of the islands and also the marine tourism. But a very significant economic impact. They also had much of the supply chain, if you look how remote their location is. And so they've actually developed local food growing in response to that and a barter system and economy. I now wanted to focus on Samoa, the islands of Samoa. So Samoa had, and this is now bringing in some of the UN SDGs, they had quite good universal access to drinking water, sanitation, and electricity, and were very focused on mobile technology, internet, and financial inclusion. Along with a whole another series of islands, Samoa is COVID-free, but they did this by closing their economy. And as you can see here, this not just affects the tourism revenue, it affects the overall GDP. And we've got some estimates of what's going to be happening to all these related islands. Samoa is a very interesting state because it's been a regional leader in sustainable tourism interventions and developing common sustainable tourism approaches. including Hawaii in there because it's an area that I'm personally working in, but also because I think it's a very interesting how they themselves are very much also going towards a sustainable tourism approach, but very much also looking at it in the context of mass tourism and large volume tourism, because as we'll see at the very end of the presentation, there is an approach which suggests you go for smaller numbers of high value. So Hawaii's also in some restrictions is that there's freedom of travel throughout the United States, which means Hawaii could not ban other US citizens from its borders. So they had mandatory forced quarantines that affected anybody coming into the country, but it really created significant hardship and very high unemployment. And it went from being the lowest unemployment to the highest unemployment. But they also have very much what they call a low-end challenge, which are statewide sustainability goals. So that's just an example of what you'd see as you're flying into Hawaii, what you have to do to enter. And they've actually been very strict. And what's been interesting there's citizen enforcement. Now, in terms of going forward, they would really like to open up, but there is the issue of traveling between the islands and actually traveling in an island. So as well as a very active airport screening, which is enforced, they've talked about the possibility, which wasn't put in place at least for September, of bypassing quarantine with a negative COVID test, but also an enhanced movement quarantine, which allows at a county level to track parties, and a resort bubble concept, which would keep tourists within a geofence, but you'd also have digital tracking. So interesting approaches. And that's what I'd like to really briefly talk about is Seychelles and the Indian Ocean. I don't want to speak too much on this because we had an excellent presentation yesterday, but just really to highlight again the high dependence on tourism and the very strong focus here on the blue economy. If we've got the president of Seychelles really talking about the importance of conserving the ocean and protecting the future. And that really is a very interesting aspect in how they're implementing sustainable tourism, but also their strong activities, particularly for global climate efforts, the Blue Economy Roadmap, which they've done with Mauritius, which is going to be a model across the SMIDs and the small islands, and also dealing with food security by protecting fish and the livelihoods of fishermen in this time. And as you can see here, they've got that approach of which countries are permitted to enter, based on their different findings and COVID rates. So we look at this is very high level, and again, I'm going to just leave it on long enough if parties want to visit a bit more, but again, some of the things that we've seen that a lot of economies may contract, and that would increase their vulnerability also to natural disasters or climate change, this COVID does not really take away from some of the other issues that are there as well, and I've really mentioned the food insecurity and economic stresses. From a perspective of the UN SDGs and also sustainable development, there's the importance of scaling up the international and national efforts, and really to have integrated planning and policy coherence in the recovery actions, which will take some period of time. It's not expected that tourism, at least in these areas, will rebound to previous levels immediately, and in the future there'll be higher health and social risks. And this is one of the approaches I mentioned earlier. It may be that one will choose higher value, but less parties to deal with the risk management issue. And an example of that could be very much if you really have to have a hotel or a guide and be registered, so that might discount or preclude some of the lower cost tours.
Sorry, Magdalena, we really have to.
I know this is my last slide, so I'm just going to finalize this just to give you a chance to see it. And part of that is really going to be better employment for local parties. And as I mentioned earlier, the blue economy. I'd now like to thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much for this very interesting presentation, Magdalena. We will be moving on to our next presenter, who is a specialist in sustainable tourism from CHILEAN, Patagonia. Thank you very much, Magdalena, and welcome, Philippe.
We cannot hear you.
We cannot hear you.
Maybe now, yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. Great, thank you. So, yes, I'm gonna start with this presentation, and this is Well, first of all, hi everyone. I would like to thank the entire Green Destination team for making this event possible. I am Felipe Vera, representative of Green Destinations in Chile and member of the UN WTO panel of experts and advisor for NATALES and FUTALEUFU destinations in sustainable tourism management. And this presentation is sustainable management of tourist destinations post-COVID-19, the experience of NATALES and FUTALEUFU in Chilean Patagonia. So this presentation highlights three fundamental challenges for Chilean destinations. The first is the need to manage destination in a sustainable way because there's a lack of technical knowledge in the tourism value chain and in those responsible for managing a destination. And the second is work closely with a local community because decisions are made by few actors and in many cases by the central government. And the third one is identify the heritage in order to protect it, because the protection of natural landscapes and the original peoples of Chile must be incorporated into the discussion regarding the future of tourism. So let's get started with NATALES, tourism beyond Torres del Paine National Park. NATALES is located between the Almirante Montt Gulf and the Last Hope Sound, and is at the same time is the entry point to Torres del Paine National Park. We are talking about southern Patagonia because, you know, Chile is a long and narrow strip of land. It's also the starting point for expeditions to more remote areas such as the Cahuéscar National Park and the Balmaceda and Serrano glaciers in Bernardo Higgins National Park. Torres del Paine, as you know, of course, National Park is a tourist icon, not only of Patagonia, but also of Chile. And NATALES serves as a city of services for those tourists who want to explore Torres del Paine. So in other words, NATALES does not have its own identity as a tourist destination, since it lives in the shadow of Torres del Paine. More than 300,000 visitors to Torres del Paine National Park arrived last year in 2019. So that's an increase of 5% compared to 2018. So every day the pressure increases to visit Torres del Paine, and the central government continues to promote this destination as the icon of Patagonia. Torres del Paine at the same time does not have an updated load capacity study either. So the main challenge is leave behind dependence on a single tourist attraction. So in 2018, NATALES was selected as the top 100, as one of the top 100 sustainable destinations and the third best in America for its efforts in reducing single-use plastic and for its first step in creating a destination management organization. During last year, 2019, the team, all the staff of the tourism unit of the municipality of NATALES carried out a heritage survey and the creation of new hiking routes to increase the stay in NATALES and create its own identity. It is then that a new offer of sustainable tourist experiences was generated for the territory, and in addition, a new website was created exclusively dedicated to promoting the NATALES destination. So this is the slide, and this is the new website, visitnatales.travel. So now we're going to continue with FUTALEUFU, a hidden gem in northern Patagonia. So FUTALEUFU means large river in Mapudungun. Mapudungun is the language of the Mapuche people here in Chile. And the FUTALEUFU River has indeed earned its name because it's considered one of the top 3 rivers in the world for rafting and an ideal river for kayak aficionados, and also is a paradise for fly fishing as well. And FUTALEUFU lies in the ancestral territory of the Pehuelche people, and is very known, of course, for horseback riding, for yerba mate, and gauchos, or Chilean cowboys. A rich local culture that can also be explored in nervy rural communities, including, for example, Espolón and El Azul, among others. And this area also has developed a strong tradition of rural tourism, and with excellent options for visitors looking to trek or go horseback riding. So now we're talking about northern Patagonia. So now you are seeing some rafting on the FUTALEUFU River, one of the most famous activities here in this destination, and also nature at its purest form. So the main challenge is continue a path of sustainability, putting community first. FUTALEUFU has made a series of advances in sustainability. However, in a context of high political centralism, these good practices have gone unnoticed by the rest of the country. Despite having a high dependence on tourist activity, local authorities have decided to put the well-being of the local community first, and in this way present themselves as an attractive destination away from the crowds that can be seen in other destinations of Patagonia. The creation of a waste treatment and recycling center, environmental education for the local community, the promotion of good practices in organic farming, together with promotion of a healthy lifestyle for the community, and the work of fishing guides to protect the species of the river FUTALEUFU are some of the most interesting actions to be replicated in other countries. The slide that you're seeing is recycling and environmental education for its inhabitants and for visitors in the Centro de Tratamiento Integral, the Integral Treatment Center for Recycling and Waste Treatment. So, what are the main challenges for the future? In the case of NATALES, being again recognized as top 100 sustainable destination, should serve to present the tourist activity as a mechanism for economic diversification and in promoting economic activities that are respectful of the environment and the community. NATALES should choose the path of sustainability and not allow the arrival of polluting industries, as in the case of salmon farming. To achieve these objectives, is necessary to, first, improve coordination between local actors, second, increase destination management, and third, improve internal and external communications. And in the case of FUTALEUFU, they must be able to continue with good practices and control of COVID-19. FUTALEUFU is one of the few communes in Chile, only one of the 10 places in Chile that are absolutely free of COVID-19, because they closed all the borders of the commune and used the top 100 sustainable destination, because it's the first one that they received this recognition as a first step in creating a sustainable destination management organization, a DMO with sustainable focus. So the key learnings of this work, first, the management of tourist destination must consider the opinion of the local community first. The Academy has a huge responsibility to lead controlled environments, such as classroom, behind, and allow new generation of students, tourism students, to give their energy for the benefits of local communities in a real world. We have an opportunity to do things differently, but time is running out, and there is a temptation to go back to the original model: number of visitors over quality of experience. So the key learnings of this work in both destinations: first, communication within the destination is essential. It is necessary to move towards to new local leadership. Public-private partnerships are announced, but not necessarily executed, and it's necessary to measure all the impacts of tourism in the community and make them transparent. So tourism in Chile will be more competitive if we place the welfare of the community and hear his voice first. And this is my quote: if tourism is not sustainable, it's just another business. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and we can keep in touch via email or LinkedIn. So thank you one more time.
Thank you so much, Felipe, and I totally agree. Sustainable tourism is the way forward, and it's beautiful to see that more and more countries are going that route. Thank you very much for this interesting one. Our next presenter, Anya, I'm going to apologize beforehand because I'm sure I'm saying it the wrong way.
It's correct. It's Anya, yes. Hi. Can we hear each other? Hello.
We hear
I
you.
hope you... Okay, perfect. So hello everybody. My name is Anya. I come from tourist destination Miran-Kras, and today I will present you on Earth where the green forested landscape intertwined with marvelous world of underground caves, and the landscape marked by a lack of surface water. Yes, hello?
Anya, I'm very sorry. We were entirely out of audio for, I think, exactly the beginning of your presentation. I'm coming back
sorry.
now. We couldn't communicate with you to let you know.
I could hear the whole story.
Can I start all over, or?
Yes, that's the best. If you can start all over, I think it's come back.
From which part you didn't hear me?
So when you started actually your presentation.
Can we hear now? I don't have any.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can hear you now. I also heard you from the beginning, so I think it's not everyone who could
Deforestation yet in the 19th century. And unfortunately, in the beginning of the 20th century, the reforestation program was interrupted by the two major events of the First World War and the Second World War, which again left a big damage to our karst landscape and territory. So after both wars, the reforestation program was replaced by spontaneous afforestation. That means the natural overgrowing of the landscape. But due to this, in the karst region, we are used to very dry summers and lack of water. So this is why the karst is really high fire risk area. So the forest fire, natural and human costs, are really nothing new for us. So now we see here the picture before the forest fire in 2019. This is the area of our destination, Mirinkras, with the monument of Ciri as a main tourist attraction, which is a part also, this area is part and protected by Natura 2000, so it's very important part. And our story began in the last year, August, when the fire started to spread in the immediate vicinity of the Monument of Peace. Due to the strong Bora winds, the fire quickly spreads and the firefighters has very difficulties to control it. More than 240 firefighters struggled for 3 days and 3 nights to put out the fire. So the result of this catastrophe was approximately 100 hectares of area that was burned to the ground, and we were reconnected to 100 years ago when the territory looked like a rocky desert. And again, we were on the ground zero. So not that only the area is protected by Natura 2000, but it was also for our destination the important touristic area and area for sports and other activities. So the damage we cannot calculate in numbers and money. So we were left, this is the picture how it was after the forest fire. And we were left with two options, or to leave the nature to find its way, but in the same time risk an extra exposure of the land to another erosion and invasive plant species, or to take the responsibility to help the nature and restore in the best way possible. So from this distress that we faced, the Tree of Syria campaign initiative starts as a bright opportunity to at least partially compensate nature for the damage done. So campaign to raise funds and donation to restore nature with new trees. So we didn't have, it was an unpredicted situation. We have limited amount of time, no funds, and lack of knowledge. So the first step was, of course, activation of various professionals and field experts. So we merged national and local institutions from Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Environment, to Municipality of Miran Kostanjevica, Slovenia Forest Service, Institute for Cultural and Natural Heritage, Slovenia Tourist Board, and so on. The important partners for planning these activities of our coming forward. So the second important step was, of course, communicate our situation to media and spread it to the global community. So involve the media in finding good partners in press and communication sector. Of course, activate a social network, and of course, creating a landing page to be as much transparent with our actions as possible. So we took action. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is, of course, now. So with this campaign, we'd like to include individuals in participation. So with the donation of 10 euros, you get one seedling of maple, oak, or pine trees. You can plant this tree in the devastated area, and so each one individual can leave a green footprint in exchange, of course, to receive the certificate for this valuable contribution. Is give or get in the greener way. So this is just a presentation of our landing page, when you can purchase the trees as much as you can, and also get the information about all donations, donators and stuff. So we decided to be the case study. We find a good field expert, Slovenia Forest Service, that supplied us with all the knowledge. We engaged different generations, from kids, from kindergarten, school, to elders. So it became a project of all the community. And of course, we are the tourist destination, so we would like to engage the visitors also to cooperate. Instead of buying different souvenirs, you can purchase a tree, donate a tree, and there is a souvenir that will last for generations to come. And of course, this was also an opportunity, this situation was an opportunity to go back to the roots, to explore the tradition of drywall construction, which was the method that our ancestors used in the past to protect the nature from spreading of these forest fires. So in the last 2 years, more than 500 individuals cooperated and were included as volunteers in the reforestation program. And till today, we have more than 300 individuals and 50 associations and companies being part of our green family of donators. So within our reforestation actions and events, we also planted a so-called Promenade of Gratitude, which includes 250 samples of trees, autochthonic trees, and that will always symbolize hope for a better and greener future for generations to come. So for the first year, we planted more than 10,000 trees. And of course, here are some other numbers about purchased trees. And here I have to tell also that more than 10,000 trees were donated by Slovenian government. So with the sustainable focus and love for the nature, we have managed to create a successful story from the worst case scenario. Our goal is to preserve and leave the natures for generations to come, and when conditions will allow you, I invited you to visit Miran Kras destination and to help us to plant more trees and become a part of our green family. So thank you all for your attention. Follow us on our Instagram account, Trevoza, and if you have any questions, I'm here for you to gladly answer you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this, Anya. I just want to introduce, first I just want to hear if Cengiz can also hear me. Otherwise, we will just go forward and introduce the head of public relations at BLED, Romana Pukat. Thank you very much for being here today. We'll just send a request to make you a presenter, and you can just go forward when you're ready.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, just make it in full screen, your presentation, and then thank you very much.
Okay. So, I'm very glad that I can be with you today and that you will see and hear our story. As perhaps some of you know, Lake Bled is one of the most beautiful natural sites in Slovenia. A small alpine lake is also very vulnerable on the other hand, and of course very attractive for visitors from all around the world. The population of municipality Bled is less than 8,000 inhabitants. Last year we have more than 1.2 million overnights. So this winter Lake Bled turned red. Now imagine the situation we faced this winter. In February, the lake turned red due to the growth of cyanobacteria. It was nothing new because algal blooming is natural phenomenon and it is not poisonous, which is very important, but it was never so intense. Then in March, COVID started, so we had to deal with the two crises at the same time. What can we do? Why the lake is red? So you can imagine what kind of situation Bled was dealing with. Fear, pressure to do something immediately, expectations from domestic public, and above all, pressures from stakeholders in tourism, like make it disappear and do it now. The first thing was to cool down and to engage brains. So municipality immediately notified the state and engaged the group of experts joined by NGOs. Meanwhile, we had to do something, so the workers tried to clean the surface with pipes and of course by hand. So first steps, what is going on? Experts from Slovenian Environment Agency who are regularly present on the lake, which is owned by the state, are carrying out measurements in order to present the lake's ecological and chemical state, and explained that such an extensive algal blooming was the consequence of several factors, but the most important, the input of the organic nutrients into the lake. So what or who is to blame? What happened? The experts came to the conclusion that the main cause for blooming is the input of the organic nutrients. Now we have a real problem. Fissures under the Ministry of Agriculture jurisdiction flow through the lake. Around 40 years old artificial pipes underwater managed by the Ministry of the Environment. These pipes are for pumping mud out of the lake. Direct influence of tourism, great interest of capital and of economy. Inland fertilization under the Ministry of Agriculture jurisdiction. So we have the state, government, economy on the other side, on one side, and locals, NGOs, and experts on the other side. The municipality of Bled has ordered the algae to be physically removed from the lake surface. This was very successful first step. It prevented algae not to sink and to become a food for new ones. So this was not done just to clean the surface, but with this we prevented algae to sink and to become a new food for a new algae. In the middle of Corona crisis in April, the municipality forced a consultation meeting between all stakeholders. The members became mayor's consultants to help with the dialogue between stakeholders and in the same time to propose the real measures. What about tourism? The impact of tourism can't be denied, although in the previous years a lot of very harsh measurements has been taken, like bathing in the lake is allowed only in public lido. In the public lido we have organic sunblock. The traffic by the lake is every year more and more restricted. The destination is trying very much to educate the locals and visitors about sustainable development. We did a really great job on waste management, on preserving cultural heritage, moving traffic from the lake. We had events without plastic and so on, but accordingly to the situation, that was of course not enough. The issue was to be addressed and solved jointly. Very important was that with the crisis, Bled played openly and very sincere. That's why we also choose to present the problem with the GGDD, so that I'm talking about it now. And as you see, we alert everyone in the state, the ministers, the president of the republic, the government, and of course our stakeholders. Rehabilitation, how and when? And the answer, of course, is immediately. The leading role, despite that the lake is common good and owned by the state, took the municipality. That, of course, is the lake is here, the lake is ours. We had to do something. What has been done and what must be done? Bled already checked the sewer line or the canalization because there was a lot of presumption that the canalization, the sewer line is leaking. So we checked the pipes and it turns out that they are okay. Despite that, the complete renewal of the system is going on, but the years will pass to complete it. And there is also one important mission is to check the artificial pipeline system installed on the bottom of the lake, which helps discharging the water on the bottom out of the lake. The Bled did that. The divers went down and with cameras and so. They didn't see that anything could be wrong, but now we are waiting for the sonar to see this with the sonar, and perhaps we will be given a better answer. So the most important, of course, is action plan. The real good news is that tomorrow, on October the 9th, the action plan should be signed by the Minister of Environment and the Mayor of Bled, but due to the COVID crisis, the action plan will be signed next week. Now, 3 days after tomorrow. Absolute embargo on input of nutrients for carp hunting purposes in the action plan, restricted bath areas. Then the other, but with the Slovenian legislation, again, very difficult realizable step to completely forbid fertilization of grassland and farmland around the lake. And of course, as I said before, check the artificial pipeline system under the water. What if? As many times before, it is clear that the project may fail due to insufficient communications and connection between the community stakeholders using and impacting the lake and of course the countryside. And the key is in discussing, cooperating, and particularly in considering experts' opinion. Yes, the lake blade today is clear and blue. So why the lake is clear and blue today? Because we cleaned the surface, and because the algae can live in the surface only when the temperature of the water is between 8 and 12 degrees. So thank you for listening to our story. I hope in the end that this will be a happy story, not a sad one.
Thank you so much, Romana. This was absolutely amazing. We are coming to our next presenter, which is, he's the founder and managing director of Red Rocks, Greg Bakunzi. Are you online, Greg?
Yes, I'm here.
Over to you.
Okay, can you hear me? I'm gonna try to share my presentation to beyond. I'm trying to open up. Can you see my presentation? Can you see my screen?
Not yet, but maybe just needs a few seconds.
Can you see it?
No, we cannot, Greg.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to share my screen with you. Yeah. Let's see. So you can't still see it. Would it be possible from the do you have my presentation? Show me how you can share it on the screen, so I'm just able just to do the presentation. Maybe it's becoming very difficult from this side.
Hey, Craig, you just got our request. Please let us know.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to share my presentation with you on the screen.
We cannot see it, unfortunately.
Yeah. Would it be possible, because I shared it with you, would it be possible if you don't mind sharing it on the screen from where you are?
Yes, sure. We can share the presentation for you. And
then
you get Google, if you can also give Greg the permission to move the screen, like when I share my screen. So so he can move the mouse and so on.
That's right. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you. Are you there?
Yes, so now it should be there. I just have to make it in viewer mode, and then you will be ready to go.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me. I'm so sorry that we had an internet issue, but I'm glad also we have a backup of the team that is a bit far from where we are to help us and see how we can do the presentation here. Yeah, my name is Greg Bakunzi, and I'm speaking from Rwanda, and I'm the founder of Red Rocks Initiative, which is a non-profit organization that is really focusing on developing community-based tourism initiatives around our region. So we have managed to do this program in 3 countries, which is Rwanda, Uganda, and Congo. But mostly we are based in Rwanda. That's where most of our operations are. But we came up with this idea because we saw many tourists use really to come to our area. And the purpose of coming here was because of the mountain gorillas that we share in the 3 countries. But then there was really nothing else to do. And that's why we came up with a plan and say, how can we come up with something beyond the gorillas? And I really liked the headline of the presentation, which was saying, you know, beyond tourism dependence. What else? What if the community are going to focus 99% on the tourism and something like this happens in a short time? What's going to happen? You know, if they are no longer doing their farming, they are no longer involved in anything which is more economic income that doesn't depend on international tourists coming in. So this is how we came up with the idea of like really working with the local communities and develop more tourism talents that could help them to grow up. So as I have said, the Rocks Initiative for Sustainable Development was formed in the year 2017 as a governmental stakeholder with an intention to support sustainable development in Rwanda, beyond, especially in the Virunga Massif, which is engaging in sustainable tourism and community-driven environment conservation initiative that are meant to benefit the local communities among specific priorities and strategic to attain the Vision 2050. Back in 2001, I had a vision which was saying 2020, but 2020 came as another year. It really affected I don't know how we can call it. We should even call it like it's a dead year, but also the same thing we have to say. It's still alive here because we are still alive and able to go on. But our intention was to engage with the local community in tourism, conservation, and community development programs. Issues caused by COVID-19. Our government took a very strategic measures aimed at containing the spread. These measures include the ban or public gatherings, the identification closure of public institutions, including schools and universities, suspension of all air, restricting movement of people, launch of testimony program to identify isolated, treat affected people. And all these things that stopped people from the lockdown affected so many smaller scale industries, even those people that were depending on the tourism. They started encroaching the national parks. Especially we had a case in our neighboring country in Uganda where people started really going into the national parks to do the hunting because there was no tourism. So it's what we did on our side. One was to educate the local communities and started engaging them in the conservation and having them like have some smaller workshops, maybe online, or we do something when we are like 3 people, just to tell them that don't worry, tomorrow things are going to be fine. And then also sitting together and try to find what else can we do if the tourism industry is no longer going on. So we have been carrying up all those workshops, and we have also seen the results from the workshops that we have been carrying on. So impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, this is a general thing. I think everybody might have been, every country might have been really affected in its own way. But human suffering, the rapid loss of life and deterioration of health outcome but increase also economic suffering through losses of jobs, other income, and companies are harmed by the lockdown. Many companies, many small businesses that were bringing income like restaurants, bars, were no longer working. So everybody, the youth, they lost their jobs. But I know this is a general thing, apart from one of the neighboring countries, which is Tanzania, where they were saying, so there is no COVID, there is no pandemic, so they did not close down, anything. So everything was open since the beginning, since March up to now. They have really been open and not even mentioning anything concerning about the virus. So severe global economic recession is a visible conclusion that the global economy striked into a recession in 2020. This might be in the same thing that happened back in 2009, but we have really to see what are we going to focus on if this kind of recession is going to come. So, and if we want to combine tourism, conservation, community, how are we going to do this? Well, we have come up with an initiative of saying, how can we do the agriculture and then turn the agriculture into the agro-tourism program? So whereby the local communities, they feel that they start like building the culinary destinations. They start building best food for beverage tours experiences. So this kind of small things that are built on agriculture, they are going to help them, to stay in the room, but we just drive them in the concept of the tourism. So we encourage them to do the best food travel storytelling. So whereby smaller communities will be able to have a story to tell about their food, what they grow and what they have. We also try through our workshops, we try also to come up with innovative use of the local ingredients. So whereby at least 3 to 4 people come together and say, hey, I know how to cook. I know how to cook the local, potatoes using this kind of ingredients. And all those ingredients, we encourage them, they have to come from within the area that they are really visiting or where the area that they live in. We have seen that one of the most important things that this pandemic has taught us is about food security. But we also want to turn up this food tourism. Then food tourism, we see it as an act of travel for the taste of the place. So where the domestic tourists or even international tourists that might be coming maybe in the next 2 to 3 years, but we don't know when, and so that they can come and also get a sense of the place that they are visiting. At the same time, when the local communities are really like helping themselves through agriculture, we also hope to encourage them to have this home farming stays. These are like homestays, but where people are going to be staying in homes and they engage with the local community so that they can all exchange ideas and get experience on the food that they offer. When we go back to the financial and private sector, distress, people have been, the financial and the corporate sector suffered large scale deterioration. Markets have taken a big, the financial system under distress. The banks are likely to see a huge pressure on the balance sheet. Private firms are being hurt by the collapse in demand. Even though the banks here in Rwanda are trying to say there is a recovery thing, they can come still get the funds to recover from them, but who will be staying in a hotel of 261 beds? Where are we going to get those people who will be staying there? If they do the renovation right now without knowing where the pandemic is heading. You know, there is no need of even getting another loan and then you put it there, then you are totally stuck in the business. So all these are things that are affecting our tourism industry. But as Redos, we have come up with different ways of measurements and finding solutions. Measurements and results for and solutions. We initiated the idea of establishing microfinance, which provided surplus income from the sales of bread, allowed the members of the community to start up small businesses and are now able to buy local food and pay for the health care, their children, and the other services. We also partnered with local visual artists to promote their well-being. They started operating art classes, younger spring local artists. In return, they paid dues for their services offered by the benefits that come from their product, what they produce. We encourage and support families to grow nutrition food in their backyard and gardens behind their homes, sensitizing the local communities about the benefits of taking nutrition food, providing vegetable seeds, and receptive gardens. We hope to provide them small animals like sheep, goats, and chicken in the future as a post-COVID scenario. All these are some of the initiatives that we are coming up with under our program of skills development programs. As our past COVID-19 initiative, we have eager to count for international markets through participatory planning, meetings like-minded persons and organizations. Whoever is interested could get in touch, then we are able enable our local women corporation to reach international markets. We are trying to see how can we do a long-term partnership with different organizations like the Green Destination Travel. I have to say thanks, Albert, for coming up with the idea of the guidebook. That guidebook is really good, and we are so excited. We hope maybe in the future it can bring us some partners, and these partners will escalate our industry and our business in this part of the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg, for this. It's beautiful to see how we are moving towards a green destination worldwide. And thank you so much to all our presenters for sharing your take on beyond tourism dependency. I think this was a good insight, and thank you very much. Do we have any questions for our presenters?
Yes, we do. And please feel free, presenters, to switch on your cameras. And we also have some general questions that any of you can answer. So let's see what we have here. I have a question from Elizabeth Beldam. And please, all of you, just share the answer. What kind of innovations do you see from small tourism businesses to cope with the new COVID situation? So, Katja, Magdalena, it was mostly directed to you from the questionnaire.
If I can just jump in, I think, you know, we're talking about Namibia, which is a third world country. So I think on the one side, you know, like since March, we had time to really focus on, you know, what is working, what is not working, see, you know, where there needs to be improvement within the tourism sector. And there's definitely a switch going towards, you know, sustainability, but also to help everyone, to help the small entrepreneurs in the different regions to, you know, move forward and to see how we can survive, because tourism in Namibia is a huge part of our economy, you know. So it has been a challenging year, but at the same time it has also been wonderful to see how can we grow out of this and actually, you know, move forward and you know, improve. I don't know if that was answering the question.
Hi, this is Magdalena. I'll just briefly speak to it, but more from the perspective of small islands. If I think about some of the ones I looked at and even the regions that are remote in coastal Arctic, the reality is that there won't be tourism or not a lot of tourism for a while. And that the more important thing is local self-sufficiency to the extent possible, particularly if there's food scarcity. On an ongoing basis, I think there will be greater tourism, but I think there'll be a rethinking of how it occurs. If we consider the pandemic's going to last at least another year, and then there's going to be intermittent infections for years, there's going to have to be higher protocols, probably restrictions on the amount of people who come. So that's why I really made that point of more local sustainability, and then also actually embracing less tourists, but who might spend more money.
Thank you. Any of the other presenters, would you like to add a thought to this question?
Yeah, do you mind? Yeah, let me just jump in very quickly and also say something about that. I think as Madalena, you have said, the tourism industry is totally going to change. It's going to change their concept. We are going to see many people have been really focusing, especially in the African continents. We have been trying to focus on luxury, high-end tourists and things like that. I think this kind of tourism is going to go straight, like, back on the roots. I saw somebody who was presenting, I think, from Slovenia, who said something about, like, back on the roots. I think we are going to go back on the roots within the local communities and try also to see what kind of tourism products could be developed on the ground level, which are going to be focusing, of course, in a sustainability way through agriculture, food, drinks, and experiences, which will be totally staying with the local families, where people will be even paying $10, $5, €2 just to stay with the family and just experience that. And this might even take a long time, more than, say, 5 years, until when the luxury tourism is going to start coming in. I'm just talking on the perspective of the African continents, not on those smaller islands, but I can also see that if they can develop anything that goes with agro-tourism and also encourage domestic tourism, this could be one of the things that could help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. And Magdalena, you partially answered the next question, which is which segment of tourists are the first targets when remote destinations open again? And not just remote destinations, but all the rest. Go ahead, any of you.
Did you want me to speak briefly to it? I commented on it briefly, but I think everybody here has done it in different ways. One of the tourists that you're going to want are the healthy tourists, and that's why you see the US, which is typically a prime tourism destination in many parts of the world, having restricted access. So the first tourists you're going to want are the healthy tourists who are not going to bring infections to remote locations. And then I think it would be very interesting if I'm not speaking now from remote destinations, not local tourist destinations in a country. It would be very interesting if those destinations could decide which tourists they wish to attract, whether it's the sustainability, the higher value, the one who wishes to use local services and hire local guides. I think that would be a very interesting perspective to take. But we have to recognize many remote destinations are captive to particular audiences.
Thank you. And Anya or anyone else from the continent?
Mm-hmm. I think my opinion is that maybe this COVID situation put us in a situation when we have to rethink about our guests. I saw by our experience that we, for the past year, the Slovenian guest was not considered as a primary guest, and this year was a twist. So we had a lot of domestic guests, and this is a thing that has the potential, of course, also to dedicate a little bit more energy to the rural place. So not to concentrate in the cities, but also to the countryside. Slovenia is a small country, has a lot of land and a lot of countryside. So this is one option to offer our future guests to, stay in the countryside, close to the nature, but in the same time, you are very close to every monument and different tourist attractions that are usually very visitable. So this is my point of view for this COVID. I think we have a lot of options, and maybe in the different way that we are used to be, but we know in tourism sector we are like cats. We have many lives to confront. So.
Yes, I agree with Anya. Perhaps our story from that this year, the locals, we took a deep breath, and to see in what really beautiful place we are living, because the other years we didn't have time to see, to stop, to hear. But now our guests this year were different. They were more attentive. They were more, I don't know, they were interesting in a local life. They were more interesting in the nature, in our cultural heritage. So I think this summer was the summer to make friendships between locals and our tourists. And in one way, we are thankful for that we have this opportunity, because last year we have 1.2 million overnights, only 8,000 inhabitants. So you can imagine how it was.
Thank you, Romana. And then I would go to the last question, which also fits well now, from Beth Hogan. How places are integrating global players like Airbnb into their sustainability planning and actions?
That's a difficult question.
Please jump in.
It's a very difficult question, because on the one side you have hotels and all the infrastructure they have, and so. And the big hotels are, of course, communicating with the locals and with the society and so on. And on the other hand, you have Airbnb. And I think with Airbnb and Booking and so, it's all about the money. So that's the main problem, as I see it.
Thank you. Felipe, can you add anything?
Yeah, sure. There is a big question too, because here in Chile, Airbnb is not regulated like many places, of course, of the world. But at the same time, I think, just my opinion, of course, Airbnb should play a big role in terms of sustainability of the places, of the destinations, but in a close contact, of course, with the local communities in terms of the vision of the local communities about this place, the destination. So if authorities or government are not willing to regulate a market, I think that the main problem is the model of the tourism industry right now. So COVID-19, I think, is showing us many wrong things that the tourism industry is doing all over the world. So Airbnb, I think, is just one point of course of the discussion, but at the same time, there's a lot of discussion about if we are putting community voice first, if local governments are ready to make the leap in terms of management, if and of course if the tourism value chain is ready to, of course, to make the leap in terms of innovation and use of technology. So Airbnb, of course, is a player, but it's not everything. I mean, the knowledge and the lack of knowledge, the technical knowledge in management is the main gap, and we are living that in Chile right now. And also, of course, the social uprising in many places of the world, and there's lots of challenges that we need to face right now. But COVID-19, of course, is one, but we can't forget the main crisis of tourism, and its climate emergency. I think that COVID-19 is one. It's the most important right now, but we need to think in about the climate emergency. That is the main emergency. So time is running out.
Thank you, Felipe, and thank you, all of you. And I will let Katja close and wrap up the session.
Thank you very much, everyone. This was absolutely amazing. It's good to see that, the mindset is the same. It doesn't matter where you're from. If you're from Africa, if you're from an island, if you're from America, South America, or Europe, the idea to, go forward, sustainable tourism is amazing. And I'm very glad to be part of this. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you for participating and being on board with us. We are going to close this session now. Thank you for everyone. And our next session is starting very soon, in about 25 minutes. So we'll just have a little break now, but you can stay connected. And we are going to have a workshop coming up. So please stay with us. And probably we'll just do a little bit of technical checks in the meantime. Thank you to all of you.